How did you get here this weekend? Did you look at an atlas? Did you use a GPS? Did you ask directions? Did you use your trusty friend? Whatever way you came here, you were assuming that places are where they're supposed to be and that you will be able to make your way to those places. Humans have been mapping the world for thousands of years. Those early maps didn't worry too much about being accurate, and people used their imagination to fill in the gaps and draw monsters where empty spaces were. Later, people started to use maps as a way of naming and claiming territory, of putting their mark on places in the world. The people of Donegal knew this was dangerous. In 1603, they beheaded the Queen's mapmaker when he came to make maps of Donegal because they didn't want anybody knowing about their country. And it's not just Donegal. Google caused a war in 2010 when they had an inaccurate map of the border between Nicaragua and Costa Rica. Nicaragua invaded Costa Rica and said it's not an invasion, it's our own country. The map actually says so. We all have a map of the world in our heads, and we think of it as an accurate map, but it's always a distortion. Map takes 3 dimensions, turns it into 2 dimensions, and so something always gives way. This is a classic Mercator projection. It shows true direction, but as a result, areas get distorted. And as a way of trying to deal with this, this is the Gall-Peters projection, which shows the actual area of maps, but in order to do that, it distorts all the shapes. And this is the washing line map of the world that gives us a very different sense of where we live. And what happens if we use the map to show things other than shapes or places? This is a cartogram that's used to show the difference in wealth between different parts of the world, and it shows how wealth distorts the world that we live in. And this is another map which equates territory, the size of territory, with population. If you do that, then Russia becomes China, China becomes Indonesia, Canada becomes India, but Ireland, Yemen, Brazil, and the US all remain the same. So, maps are political, but sometimes the politics of maps are a little bit hidden. On the left is a map of Ireland from the 19th century colonial times, where Ireland is shown as a peasant woman with a simian-featured child on her back. And the other map is a map of the dangers of communism, shown in red. Here's a recent map, just a year old, showing the dangers of terrorism in Afghanistan, also being shown in red. Red is the color of danger in maps that you look at all across the world. But maps and politics don't have to be direct. Here's a satirical map of Africa as seen by Americans in the midst of the hunger and desert and disease. You also have celebrities like Madonna and Obama and a little bit of South African bling. And here's a map of Europe according to the French. We are in the land of Catholics, but at least this year, or this time, we're not in the land of noisy, hairy people, of poor brothers as savages, or in the land of the slayer of virgins. But forget about politics. Maps can help you chart your way through your love life. They can bring you to romance. Here's a map of the words that people use to describe themselves in online dating profiles. This is a map of virgins in the US. The brighter the color, the more the virgins. And here's a map of dating profiles in the Bronx. Everything from cheats and ravagers to beans and umbrellas. And if those are a little bit too romantic for you, you can have a more utilitarian map. Depending on what you're looking for, you might want to avoid Ireland and Romania on your next holidays and go instead to Hungary or France. And if that's not working, then instead you can follow the chart of true love on a map, and you can go all the way from the mountains of melancholy and the valley of disdain through Misery Marsh to get to your destination, Honeymoon Island. But if you don't want to pay attention to the cartographer, you can turn instead to art and literature. And here's a map of the stony grey soils of Monaghan, where Patrick Kavanagh's words are used to transform a 2-dimensional Ordnance Survey map into this beautiful work and place of imagination shown on the screen in front of you. But let's go back to that original map of the world. And what would happen if we took Europe out of the centre of the world? And we put, as Australia would like us to do, we put Australia in the centre of the world instead. Or in the next map, which is a 12th century map of the world that you're about to see, a map of the world designed by Arab cartographers. It is a map of the world, but when European cartographers took over from Arab cartographers in the 16th century, they turned the map of the world upside down so that North and Europe was at the top and at the centre of the map. So even the maps we think of as taken for granted are the product of politics. So where does that leave us? Maps are distorted, they can be manipulated. Even Google gets it wrong at times. So all we have with maps are new ways of getting lost. Thanks.